elements are work, war, and sex. Those are the three elements that turn boys into men. The difference between boys and girls is this: boys have to be turned into men. Almost always through for a lack of a better term, a traumatic event. It's part of the male psyche. It's part of the male psychology. So boys in traditional cultures go through manhood rituals. They go through tests of endurance to show spirit mastery over body. Okay? They go on a hunt, they go on a quest, they have to do their first kill, they can't cry over it, they have to man up because they are expected to be the guardians and protectors of their village. Do you understand that? So you are turned from your mother's son to your father's son in these boyhood rituals. And there is physical changes that happen to a boy's body to mark it. In traditional cultures, it's scarification or circumcision that happens to a boy. That marks his body physically. That says you are no longer a boy, you are now a man. Because this is what you were before, but you are not now. And when they survive this ordeal, they go back to the village and they are treated as men, not boys. Yes, Tony?
We all watched the video last time, and I have a hard time to understand that from boy transformed to man. A lot of men successful men in the society, CEO, they're very corrupt. So what we try to understand here, you say that boy transformed to man to a religious aspect or successful man. You know, because God can protect.
Right.
It can be different meaning.
It can, and it does take different forms in different cultures. In our culture today, we simply do not have a transformational ritual for boys to men. We don't have it for girls either. The closest thing that we have in our modern day society to this is the Jewish bar mitzvah. That's probably the closest thing that we have as a ritual or a ceremony that demarcates childhood from adulthood. The closest thing that we have in our Catholic culture is confirmation, but that's very weak, because confirmation can happen at any time. It's not necessarily at adolescence. It tends to be, but it's not necessary for that. For Jews, it happens when the boy turns 13. And he is evaluated by his rabbis. If he is not prepared, he is thrown back, and he is expected to re-study and re-come back with it. We don't have that in our culture today. We don't have a way of turning boys into men. So a lot of boys continue their adolescence interminably. They grow up and are 20-year-old little boys, 30-year-old little boys. By the way, one of the things that I've read in this, both Christian and non-Christian, is that women have a big role in this. They can both help and hinder the process. How do they hinder? By being too motherly, by perpetuating the childlikeness of boys into men. They overprotect. They don't allow the boy to grow out of being their mother's son. Okay? They can also help because one of the things that Dennis Prager writes in his commentary is that the marriage of Adam and Eve is important because women help mature men. When a man becomes married to a woman, he stops thinking about himself only. He's now got a wife to take care of. He's got a household to take care of. And then later, he's got children to take care of. This is where work, war, and sex comes in. The work and the war means that I can't think about my own selfish needs anymore. I've got a wife and kids to take care of. That grows you up a lot. It tempers that childlikeness in men. And it gives them a perspective that they can reflect off of. Okay? For women, the opposite is kind of true. Women are looking for men that can be that leader, be that protector, be that guide for the family. And when they marry children, they get very upset. They get very upset. They don't like running the household, and you know, you hear women say, I have 4 kids, my 3 here and my husband, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a flattering thing to say. Let me just tell you that, men. That's not a flattering thing to hear your wife say. Because there is a resentment in women's psychology to this. Because it's like, now I have to take care of them and him. He should be the one that's leading it. Why am I the bad guy in this role? Why am I doing all the parenting? Why am I, you laugh because you know what exactly I'm talking about. This is a failure of men being men. They're still boys. Now, in all fairness, the women who marry those men deserve what they get. They do, because that's what they were looking to do. Right? Amen? So it's a two-way street, gals. It's a two-way street. So again, women in men's psychology can be both hindrance and helps. Okay? So these would be some good books to talk about this from an anthropological perspective. Okay?
Sure.
Yes?
I have something about that.
Yep.
Back up, talk for 2 seconds. The thing is, though, is that women are looking around for a man that is a man, okay? There's not that many to choose from.
You know it.
And when that happens, her childbearing years are all dropped out.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Wait around,
Right.
wait around. So,
Yeah. No, I hear
Marry
you.
whoever
I
comes.
hear you. I hear you.
We heard that every good man behind that is a good woman.
Yes.
So if
Last man
a good
walking.
man or not, it's because the woman have to steer that.
Yes. No, it can be, but like I said, it's a delicate, you're right, behind every good man is a good woman. And women can, like I said, women can be that influence to help mature men out of that boyhood because they force them to be responsible. You are now responsible for me and our children. You can't be the little boy that you thought you were. You can't be the playboy. You can't be the bachelor, that you once were. You have responsibilities. That's what I mean by, work, war, and sex. Work matures men. I can see this in my adolescents that I work with. The boys that have part-time jobs, much different in the way that they act than the boys that don't have part-time jobs. The ones that aren't earning extra money, that aren't learning how to be responsible. So, part-time jobs, chores around the house, things like this. These are what's training men to be the responsible adults when they grow up. What I see a lot of is a lot of mollycoddling of boys. That perpetuates their 2-year-old attitudes. 2-year-olds. Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, today, one of the things that I had to do in my class was one of the boys just threw one of the textbooks across the room.
Oh.
And I was like, where do you get off doing something like that? I mean, I was really upset. And I'm like, you don't act that way in my classroom. And I mean, everyone got dead silent because I raised my voice. But it's like, really? You're going to act like children. And here you are, 15, 16-year-old boys. What's going to happen in 2 years? Do they magically turn on the switch and they become men? No, not necessarily. They can, you know.
What did you do?
I just raised my voice to that and I said, that will never happen in my classroom again.
Did he pick up the book?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, actually, one of the girls picked it up because no one would admit to who did it, but I knew the area in which it came from. So it's like, it's very frustrating to work with 15, 16-year-olds that act like 5- and 6-year-olds instead, because that's what they are psychologically, because we don't have a ritual that says you stop being a child and you're expected to act like an adult at this point. It just goes on interminably, you know? And that's why we have 30-year-old boys that women can't marry because they're still children. Yes.
This is our generation. I mean, we're talking about our generation right now is child having child.
Yes.
A child having a child?
It's kind of like they don't want to assume the responsibility.
That's right.
And they don't want to be the leader, you know. I mean,
Correct.
The leader, you know, when it says when you get married with your wife, is they both become one.
Yes.
And that means everybody else forget about mom.
Right.
It's only one.
And that comes from where? Genesis chapter 2.
Yeah.
What does it say? And a man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And notice the order. The man leaves his father and mother. It's the man that needs the demarcation from his original home to be the wife, the husband to the wife. Okay? Very interesting. So even before the fall, God placed this order into creation. See, we miss these little nuances by reading it too fast and not getting the subtlety of what's happening here. So on one hand, I feel bad that I'm not giving you this overview of the whole Bible fast, but at the same time, it's like you go over it and you miss these nuances that are a part of the whole story of creation. For example, I believe this is why we have an all-male priesthood. It's not that women couldn't or can't. That's not the issue. Men didn't. And that's why God has been training them since Judaism. In the Jewish religion, the men were priests. There were no women priests. In the New Testament, it continues. You know why? God has been trying to teach men how to lead, guard, and protect, because they never stepped up to that. Women don't need that. If anything, they overstepped their limit, and God is pulling them back from that. Sin of commission, sin of omission. You get it? It has nothing to do with the fact that could a woman ever be a priest. That's not the point in this perspective. It has everything to do with trying to train us men to be the men that God originally intended to do, and we never did. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think that that helps further underpin the whole issue. Okay? And I think that, again, it begins here. Let men be men. We don't need women to be leading and guarding and protecting. They do enough already. Okay? Men need to do something because we didn't do it in the beginning. So God is trying to teach us.
The Jews now do have women.
Oh, and there are Christians that have female priests too. That means nothing. I mean, as far as, you know, what God intended, you know what I mean? You know, people will do what they're going to do anyway.
I agree, but if they did allow it now, their group, their church, their temple has allowed it.
Right, yes. Certain sects of Judaism allow it, just like certain sects of Christians do.
Yeah.
My answer to women who want priesthood, you know, women priests in the Catholic Church is to say, go right down the street to the Anglican Church and be the woman priest, all that you want. It's not going to happen in God's church. Period. You can want it all you want. That's nice, dear. If you are that determined about, oh, I have a calling, fine, go to the Anglican Church. They'll ordain you. They will. Be a woman priest all you want. I knew a female priest when I was evangelical. Her name was Father Carol. They called her Father. Father Carol. She was in charge because it was an Episcopal church that I first worked in as a teacher, and she was the rector of the parish, and they called her Father Carol. She was a woman. I didn't agree with it, but I liked the school I was at. You know. Anyway, so it's like if you want to be a priest, go to the Anglican Church. They'll ordain you all you want. I don't understand why, if you're unhappy here, go somewhere else. Yes?
So, as far as the pronouncements go, for the pronouncement that God made for man, are they all related in terms of the family, and also on the flip side, the pronouncements that God made for women, are they all related inward toward the family, relating to the husband, the kids?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Are there any that are more focused on the community or outward? Like, is there any kind of focus on?
Those would be part of the Mosaic covenant. If we talk about the original pronouncement, it was given to Adam and to Eve and to their progeny. This is the judgment or the penance for men. This is the judgment or the penance for women in general. But they tend to be more related in terms of marriage because they were the original couple. When you get into the tribes, that's when God